Miro Polo Sweep Out the Broom Boom Countdown, a spoofing. Episode 8 Fitness, Flying License and 5G. What happened until now? My name is Alf and I'm currently in a change process. You don't know what it is? Well then, here comes the best example of a change process of all. Not long ago I worked in an open plan office at the World Institute for Astronautics, Space Research and Space Policy and equipped spaceships with fully automatic cleaning machines. And now comes the change. A few weeks later, I'm being prepared for a space expedition in which I'm supposed to take part. Attention, as a cleaner. So to speak, on behalf of the fully automatic cleaning machines that fell victim to a rationalization measure by the Institute. I admit that I have presented this in an abbreviated manner, but if you want to know exactly how it came about, you can listen to episodes 1 to 7. Here's just this much. The plot begins with a harmless savings plan and develops through several coincidences into an affair with worldwide attention, worldwide discussions and battles of opinion between different camps. I'm in the middle, sometimes a hero, sometimes a traitor. Unfortunately for the 30 astronauts with whom I will be transported into space in a spaceship in a few weeks, I'm a traitor. So at the moment I find myself between a turbulent past and a fairly uncertain future. But I'm very well distracted. I'm currently in the middle of a 50-point preparation session closely monitored by two supervisors, Mick and Jim. In the last episode, I mainly studied theory, in particular interesting facts about a planet Gliese 581c, the destination of our space expedition. It's located in a possibly habitable zone of a neighboring solar system. Gliese 581c orbits the red dwarf Gliese 581 in the constellation Libra and is probably not waiting for our arrival at all. Just as I wasn't waiting for what we have to report today. Hey, before we start, look, somewhere down here you can subscribe to my channel. That's just a small click for a human, but a giant leap, well, you know. And now starts the episode 8, Fitness, Flying License and 5G. There were still 6 weeks until launch, and a 50-point plan called for a trip for Mick, Jim and me, a 14-day trip to a training center for astronauts. This was remote in high mountains. Like a cure, great area, healthy air, great food, great medical care and sport, said Mick, and that should be a short summary of what we, especially me, could expect. For the first time since the 50-point plan started, I felt excited and happy. Perhaps I should have been a little more suspicious, as I had occasionally heard critical things about this facility when astronauts spoke about it. But because I thought astronauts were notorious braggarts, I didn't believe much of what they said about a training center. Furthermore, the terms high mountains and remote promised a break from the 24-hour siege by official and unofficial media representatives and photographers. I could really use that. So I was pretty innocent and in good spirits as I sat in the helicopter that took us to the training center. In addition to Mick and Jim, 2 other astronauts traveled with me. I didn't know them. Both gave the impression that they desperately needed a cure. I had really seen astronauts so dejected and taciturn. That didn't just seem to be due to the strained relationship I had recently with almost all members of this profession. No one spoke, so I enjoyed the flight and the view. At some point, the mountains came into view and soon after the training center. It was an object that consisted of several shimmering silver buildings whose shape was reminiscent of flying saucers. It was located in an area above the tree line and was surrounded by towering mountain giants, the lower ends of whose summit glaciers almost reached the object. Is it possible to ski here? I asked while landing. "You'll be amazed at what you can do here," replied one of the two astronauts, obviously very much in a bad mood. I noticed that Mick immediately stopped any further commands with a quick movement of his head. The astronaut apparently understood this, felt silent and turned away. I was briefly surprised by Mick's reaction, but quickly forgot it because the welcome at the training center was such that with the best will in the world you couldn't have expected anything bad. Everyone was friendly, explained who's where and what the next steps would be. First, I was given a comfortable light green jumpsuit with the institute's emblem and a kind of timetable, and was released to the accommodation assigned to me. It was a small room, quite comfortable, functionally furnished, with a panoramic window to a view of the mountains. So the first impression was good. Pure relaxation. Sleep out. No further activities were planned for the arrival day. I met Mick and Jim for dinner, then I streamed a documentary about skiing and relaxed. You probably won't be surprised at all when I say that the relaxation was over the next day. But step by step. On the timetable for the mornings there was a term that I couldn't relate to and which therefore didn't initially worry me. Human centrifuge. You have no idea what it is either? Well, then we'll just wait together until it clears up. Sleep out. First, I had breakfast with Mick and Jim. I was in a good mood and glad that we weren't surrounded by media people and photographers. Everything was calm and peaceful. There was hardly any activity in the cozy cafeteria. Mick and Jim also seemed in a good mood, chatting and joking. All in all, I felt better than I had a long time, without pressure, without stress, without constant attention. After breakfast, Mick and Jim handed me over to a friendly doctor who examined me, took blood, and explained to me the procedure at the training center. He explained to me the aim and content of all examinations and training. He briefly and clearly outlined the goals that he was sure I would achieve within the next 14 days. Fitness, flying license, and 5G. Fitness, I thought I understood that. Flying license, this was, and I know this from my 50-point plan, about acquiring a license to fly a so-called jetpack, a propulsion unit that can be run on your back for movement on the target planet. 5G? I had no idea. The doctor explained. Terms such as G-force, gravitational acceleration, and human centrifuge were mentioned. The doctor explained in which cases the acceleration can reach a multiple of the gravitational acceleration and that my physical constitution would have to be trained to withstand this. I nodded to everyone, said yes or aha every now and then and understood, well, relatively little. Sleep out. The look on my face probably gave me away, so the doctor said one more sentence. We need to make sure that you can easily handle acceleration situations in spaceships, he said. That's why we train these, and the human centrifuge helps for this. Any questions? The doctor looked searchingly. I shook my head. Then we'll start the first test in the human centrifuge. He politely asked me to follow him, and we walked down a hallway into a room that looked like a spaceship command center. A large window provided a clear view of a circular hall in which there was a kind of bridge, and the ends of which each ended in a cabin. Looks like a carousel, I thought. Sleep out! Have fun! The doctor shouted as we left the command center via a steel staircase and descended into this circular hall. 2 assistants received me. The first time it can be a bit turbulent, said one of the 2 assistants. Don't worry, said the other, and he strapped me into a cubicle in a half-lying, half-sitting position. We watch everything closely from above and nothing can happen. Do you already suspect something? I did not. Sleep out. Then the cabin was locked. Nobody wants to come with me? Well, apparently not. I was left alone. The cabin was only dimly lit. I couldn't see much. After a short while, the doctor's voice came over the loudspeakers. So, he began, we're starting now. Try not to tense up and stay calm, he said. From my point of view, there was no cause for alarm. I lay comfortably, I said. However, a moment later, the situation changed dramatically. When I was a child, my mother came along at the last minute when some boys persuaded me to get into a washing machine. Unfortunately, my mother wasn't there now, and so the events that she had narrowly managed to prevent at the time were now furthering to take place. How are you? I heard the doctor's voice.
Let me out of here,
I shouted. However, the words only came out of me instantly, because the shape of my mouth was changing so much that one cheek was pushed into the oral cavity and the other was inflating outwards like a balloon. Take a deep breath and keep calm. I'll keep accelerating, I heard the doctor. I didn't understand why he could assume that I could calm down after this announcement. In fact, the speed continued to increase. When my left cheek touched my right molars and my right cheek was already dangerously far away from me, I was sure that this was the last opportunity in my life that I would be able to call for help. In truth, I had long since missed the last opportunity because I bit my tongue painfully, which had also turned towards my right cheek. I felt my breakfast from this morning like a stone in my stomach. My legs seemed to deform and take on an unhealthy volume. I was sure that I wouldn't survive the time until the capsule came to a standstill. Oh, I only came to when I was lying on a stretcher and heard the doctor's voice next to me. Oh, not bad for the first time. 3G, he said, and my condition didn't seem to worry him at all. Actually, something wanted to answer. To be on the safe side, I didn't do it because I couldn't really access the current position of my tongue and my facial areas. Actually, you can get up again, said the doctor. I didn't believe him. The unbelievable happened. All of my body parts still seemed usable, a state that I no longer expected to regain. You have reached 3G. 5G is the goal, the doctor said. Maybe we will even be able to do it in the first week, but we'll have to train for that every day. That evening, I typed the term human centrifuge into the online encyclopedia. When I read what it said, I was glad I hadn't done this the night before.
The human centrifuge is a technical device with a cabin, which is connected to a rotatable bearing via an arm and is set in rotation. As a result, the person in the cabin is exposed to a centrifugal force that can be several times the gravitational acceleration g. The human centrifuge is used to prepare pilots and astronauts for the acceleration during the launch of a rocket or a fighter jet, or to train them to physically cope with this. As the human centrifuge rotates, the occupant's blood follows the centrifugal force, similar to a rocket launch, and is pushed from the brain to the feet. This can lead to loss of consciousness.
After the first day, the training in the training center really got going. Everyday fitness training, human centrifuge. I want to mention it now. I didn't get to ski. However, I had other opportunities to come into contact with the wild nature around the training center. Listen now. It happened while training with the jetpack, the backpack with rocket propulsion. Depending on the goal and mission, spaceships were equipped with vehicles and aircrafts for use on the target planet. In order to be able to drive or fly these, some of the astronauts of the crew usually had special training. But there were also means of transportation that every crew member had to master. For example, the jetpack, the easiest category of flight licenses. The training on this device was led by Tony, a younger local who actually worked in the center's gym and was assigned exclusively to me and to the jetpack training. It's not difficult. We'll do it quickly and easily, he said on the drive to the training ground. You will be able to do it this afternoon. You have to be able to do it till then. I have a date later, he added, drove accordingly quickly and didn't waste any time during the briefing. The controls are like a game console controller, he said as he put a device on me. Climb 1 to 2 meters and then land again. He pushed me to the center of a white cross that was laid out in the open space and commanded, stand up straight, Feel the small gear lever with your right thumb and go. I stood up straight, felt for the little gear lever, and off I went. It quickly became clear that I have completely underestimated the performance of the device. I shot up.
Be sensitive.
I heard Joni shouting on the ground. At about 100 meters altitude, I began to panic slightly, which in turn did not have a positive effect on my ability to operate the controls sensitively. Tony screamed and waved his arms, but the distance from him was already so great that I could not longer understand him.
Help! Help!
I screamed. Seconds later, I found myself at the same altitude as the surrounding mountain peaks, which in turn led to me being surprised by unexpectedly adverse weather conditions. I managed to reduce the thrust, but was caught in a gust of wind and drifted towards a snowy peak. In the excitement, I was unable to take countermeasures, and so I ended up being a case for the mountain rescue team. I reached solid ground near a summit cross. The deep snow saved me, but the jetpack was out of order. The buildings of the training center lay small like toys on the mountain Pialomi, and I discovered that the area in which I could move without falling was smaller than 1 square foot. It felt like it took hours before I heard a helicopter and was able to make myself noticeable, and it took another few hours until a landing spot could be found from which mountaineers could rescue me shortly before dark. Tony didn't say a single word on the return flight. He had missed his date. During fitness training, I was assigned to a training group whose members looked like bodybuilders right from the start. A week of training and you will be almost distinguishable from the others, the trainer promised. However, I didn't like the methods she used to try to achieve this. A cross-country run on the first day of training ended with me collapsing after 6 miles. I achieved my first successes when I was able to increase the distance until I collapsed to 8 and finally to 10 miles on the following days. And finally, what I thought was impossible happened: 12 miles without collapse. A few days later, towards the end of my time in the training center, I was lifting weights during strength training that I wouldn't have been able to pull behind me in a handcart before, and miracles happened in other respects too. I passed all exams, also the 5G. Mick and Jim were happy. Although at the end of the 14 days, they had become a bit fat compared to me. The time in the training center was up, and a few points more on my 50-point plan were fulfilled and could be checked off. Trip home. We flew back to the institute, and from there I was driven home. A weekend of relaxation lay ahead of me. Home at last. I passed my garden gate through the now usual storm of flashbulbs and had to watch as a large part of the plants in my garden fell victim to a police operation. Before I knew it, I was surrounded by a crew of men with weapons. I was asked to put my hands over my head, and only when I complied with this demand in the face of the obvious superior force did 2 police officers carefully approach me to handcuff me. After they had succeeded, the situation diffused a little. The weapons were secured again, and I dared to ask what the gentlemen were doing. At first, I didn't receive an answer. The area around my house became increasingly populated with spectators, photographers, and television crews. Under place flashbulbs, some television crews began live broadcasts. Breaking news! We are in front of the house of Alf Meyer, the designated participant in the space expedition to the constellation Libra. Alf Meyer has just been taken into custody by heavily armed police officers. The police took me into my house. Unusual was that my household robot was switched to alarm mode. "Yes, that's him," I heard him say. "Do you do something like this more often?" one of the police officers asked. I tried to make it clear how little I understood what was going on. but had no significant success. "Speak!" a police officer shouted. When I asked what I wanted to talk about, his already bad mood worsened considerably. "You were caught trying to break into this house!" he shouted. "I don't need to break in, I have a key," I pointed out. "Who is the accomplice who gets them the keys?" asked the police officer, and another remarked from the background. "Sounds like an organized gang." The conversation continued like this for a while. Only when I persisted in claiming that I lived in this house did the police slowly become unsure. "I don't know this man," said my household robot. In time, before this statement could worsen my situation again, I suspected what had happened. In fact, at the training center, my body measurements had changed so much that they no longer matched those stored in the robot for my identification. To him, I was a supposed intruder, which, according to the program, caused him to raise the alarm. Half an hour later, I was alone in the house again. However, a hell was breaking loose outside. A big breaking news line ran through the screen on TV. "Alf Mayer arrested! Was he a victim of a conspiracy by the astronauts?" So much for today. I need silence. Give me a while to rest. In the next episode, I'll meet old friends and hopefully you too. So until then, and take the time to subscribe to my channel and activate the bell so that you will be informed when it continues. Bye!